A flaming crocodile leaps at a soldier. Rockets fly from a crudely made backpack and smash into a pristine, glistening anti-aircraft turret. Fire breaks out across a field of modified tobacco before the protagonist snaps his fingers back into place and jumps into a helicopter. The air finally free from the scourge of the rockets that plagued it not 5 minutes ago, a beautiful island paradise comes into view. This is the island of Yara. This is Far Cry 6, and this is absolute madness. It's something you come to expect from a Far Cry game by now, right? A mass, sprawling open world, a cackling despot that needs dethroning, and a balmy array of weaponry and tools to let you rain chaos down to achieve your goals. The 6th main entry in the franchise doesn't do too much to change up the formula, but what it does do is deliver a refined experience that should satisfy the most die-hard fans. The villain of the piece this time out is Anton Castillo, magnificently portrayed by Giancarlo Esposito. He dominates every scene that he's in, channeling the understated menace that he's known for. There's more than a hint of Gus Fring dripping from his time on screen. Castillo is the head of state for Yara, a fictional island nation that will draw some distinct parallels to stereotypes of Cuba. His scientists have developed a brand new type of cancer treatment called Viviro, derived from tobacco leaves that were grown on the island. The issue is that these leaves are treated with a chemical solution that the island have dubbed the poison, and through use of forced labour, many of them are becoming sick and dying. Castillo's obsession with turning Yara into a global powerhouse off the back of Viviro, combined with his iron-fisted rule, is tickling the underbelly of the island, and it's only a matter of time before it gets annoyed and swipes back. It doesn't take too long before your character Danny Rojas gets involved, and look, I made the joke in the preview, and I'm going to do it again, it's not the guy from Ted Lasso. Meeting with friends on a rooftop, Castillo's forces begin to clamp down on any uprisings, arresting and slaughtering with abandon. Danny escapes the island, but not before a chance encounter with Castillo's son Diego in the process. Before long, Danny is drafted into Libertad, a revolutionary fighting group, and begins enlisting others to the cause, with the ultimate goal of taking down Anton and hopefully the entire Castillo dynasty. Diego's addition into the game adds a very neat wrinkle into the fabric of Far Cry 6, with a clearly troubled character being given the nuance and depth that he deserves. As the game progresses, it's plain to see that not all is well with the son of the dictator, and his story is told with a surprising amount of delicacy that I didn't really expect. What I did expect, however, was a slew of over-the-top characters and bright, colourful environments. After all, this is an island paradise, right? Your new favourite drunk uncle, Juan Cortez, is a primary source for all the tools of chaos, and his pet crocodile Guapo becomes your first amigo in the game. He's a wonderful caricature of an old, wizened gorilla with a knack for building incredible weapons. You know, just as long as you can bring him some depleted uranium. These range from CD-launching assault rifles to the previously mentioned rocket-firing backpacks. The latter of those, called a Supremo, are essentially Danny's ultimate, allowing you to build up a stack of kills before unleashing something of a finishing move. Gunplay feels exactly as you'd expect from Far Cry, with the PS5's adaptive triggers coming in clutch once again, making each weapon's trigger feel unique. The array of customization options here is simply brilliant. Danny can change up their look, from the heavily armoured to the ridiculous, and also acquire a wingsuit among other functional items as the game progresses. Flicking back briefly, the amigos will be invaluable depending on your playstyle. The likes of Guapo and Chicharon will be aggressive, forward-thinking buddies in a defensive playstyle, whereas the likes of Chorizo will just look at his adorable little face. Who could pass up the opportunity to pet him? The game cribs from the lieutenant structure that works so well in Far Cry 5. Positioned across the map are a number of high-ranking officials that, when dispatched, will help chip away at Anton's grip on the island. To succeed, you have to enlist the help of a number of groups, who will, after gaining their trust, assist you in increasingly more elaborate schemes to potentially take down the despot and his tower. Scattered alongside the main missions are, predictably, a slew of side quests to get stuck into. These range from forcibly decommissioning anti-aircraft guns, helping revolutionaries out on ambushes, Yaran quests, which are more fleshed out side stories, and a brilliant line of treasure hunts, which have been plucked straight from Far Cry New Dawn and expanded on in a really nice way. Possibly my favourite one that I tried led me across a bunch of caves with a strange idol in my hand, with a hefty reward at the end. It's a really nice little mission structure that helps to add something new to the otherwise potential monotony of the typical fetch quest and military target clearouts. There are also a bunch of unique weapons to collect from military depots, as well as neat little mini-missions series which play out like the good old Brotherhood missions from Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. Add in some fishing, races, and a fair few other bits, and there's plenty to get stuck into if you want to break from the chaos. It could so very easily all get out of control in the worst possible ways, but Far Cry 6 managed to thread a narrative that's compelling enough to stitch the whole thing together and make you push on with your main objective. There's a lot to be said for the comments from the game's director about it being an inherently political story. They faced a bit of backlash for this when the comments were made, but I think breaking that taboo of being a political game has done wonders for it. There are no shackles on the tougher elements of the story, and there's no hiding behind the big corporation's paper-thin political apathy, but it's not quite perfect. There are at times some cartoonish interpretations of a communist country, with some throwaway sight gags relying on shock value more than anything else, but on the whole, Far Cry 6 manages to tell the story that it wants to, in the way that it wants to do it, without the worry of ruffling too many feathers. It's time to get a bit technical now, and Far Cry 6 is yet another example of a game that has me screaming out for Sony to get variable refresh rate implemented on the PS5. We'll have a technical video up soon, but it's safe to say that the frame rate is not 100% consistent. Yes, for most of the gameplay you're easily stretching into the upper 50s and edging closer to that locked 60 frames a second, but even then there's some screen tearing and a few weird dips in the frame rate. It's definitely leaps and bounds ahead of the PS4 era, where torn frames and barely touching 30 frames a second was the norm, but when the technology exists to iron out some of these problems, it's a little bit frustrating to see. As of yet, I haven't tested it on any of the platforms, but I would suspect that with VRR enabled on the series consoles, it might result in a smoother performing title without a DualSense in your hand. It's complemented by a world which is bright, colourful and varied, with urban areas giving way to lush jungle and carefully tended farmland all in one quick drive across the island. There was much to talk about there being no ray tracing on the console versions, and it's hardly surprising. The game seems to be running at a native 4K at all times, and with it struggling to hit that 60 frames a second mark, even without the latest and greatest in lighting, it's a sensible decision to omit it. However, I do wonder if there's scope to add in a performance mode here, as there are some points where the game's performance dips substantially. It's very strange. The cutscenes were a huge example of this, but as I come to edit the video portion of this review, the day one patch has dropped, and performance in this area has improved dramatically. A final shout out has to go to Ubisoft for the way that the game opens into the menu. With the PS5's default stick settings seemingly being ignored by every title on the market at this point, it was a hugely refreshing change to be greeted by a slew of accessibility options before even starting the game. This will satisfy not only pedants like myself who have to invert the right stick, but also thousands and thousands of disabled gamers who often need to check whether they'll be physically able to play the game before they consider if it's for them. It's a wonderful touch, and I truly hope that more developers take this much care and attention to making their games as accessible as possible to anyone and everyone. With all that being said, the question remains, is Far Cry 6 worth your time? Well, it's a Far Cry game, so you'll need a lot of it. I've just scraped through the story at this point in writing, and even now there are still huge patches of grey on my map. I couldn't tell you how many hours I've sunk into it by this point, but it's deep into double digits. I'm still having a bunch of fun with it, and I'm finding more things to do every time I pick up my controller. I will fully admit to not being a huge fan of the franchise before taking this review on, but once I'm done with everything here, there's a big temptation to potentially go back and plough through what I started with the previous entries. A visual stunner, Far Cry 6 wraps its fist around a tricky story to tell with all the might of the despotic Anton Castillo himself. Typical Far Cry chaos, angry animals, and lots of fire all add up to what may well be the most refined entry in the series. A few minor technical hiccups aside, this is one of the best open worlds you could choose to spend your time in, and then subsequently burn to the ground. Thank you for joining us, guys. If you have enjoyed this review, please do drop us a like, leave us a comment and subscribe to the channel. Let us know, are you going to be picking up Far Cry 6 on what platform, and let us know. We will see you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye bye.